and steady, I'm the magic. Do my thing, I'm healing, it's fantastic. If I fall, rise automatic. You ain't no now, you know. I'm the one raise myself like a tree from the roots. West side girl, cause she lit in the coast. East side girl when she speaks to the roots. Stay 100 cause she on with the truth. Been there on struggle, know that it passed. Take off. Ooh, take off. Ooh, take off. This is take off, take off, take off. Shorty like Brandy, fight like Monica. What you know about her? Baby girl rising, wet at the top. Shaking the world, don't expect her to stop. Purpose so great, she get what she got. Follow her step, cause she following God. What you need more, got a heart full of gold. Even at times when it's raining and cold. Ooh, she bout to take off. Ooh, she bout to take off.
What up, everybody? Welcome to the Uprooted Network. It is your girl, Hannah, aka Ruta, and y'all watching me live on YouTube and LinkedIn right now. I think Facebook for some reason ain't wanting to work right today, but that's okay because it's Manifest Mondays, and you already know this is my favorite segment of the week. Not to say I don't love everybody else, but this has been the most therapeutic practice for me is to manifest with all of y'all. So hopefully you guys can hear me okay. Yeah, this is new. This is new for me using this streaming service. So I hope it's working for everybody else. Definitely is a little bit cooler. Instagram isn't working today either. So look at how God showed up for me today. And right on cue. You already know the garbage truck. It's Monday, man. Hopefully somebody put out the trash. But y'all, this week, this month is all about surviving to thriving. We have gone through so much as a people that I don't really know how everyone's still standing if they don't have the coping mechanisms, the healthy coping mechanisms to deal with all this stress and grief that we've been dealing with this the last 2 years, actually. Pretty nuts. Like, if we really think about it, it has been a wild ride. And so what I want to talk to you guys about is how I get through this grief process. A lot of you guys have been asking for tips and tricks, how I'm handling things. And I just want to make sure that I'm taking care of y'all. So first and foremost, I want to talk to you guys about what is grief? Like, let's start with defining it. And the reason why I want us to talk about this in our manifesting practice and is that you can't make like your visions and your life and your reality come true when you're stuck in your grief. Because I feel like part of being stuck in your grief is not wanting your reality to change. And so I want to kind of like break that down a little bit and talk to you guys about some of the grief that I've been through in life. And yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one. And it's so weird because I'm used to having you guys in the comments here, but I can't see them. So we'll see how that goes. Ooh, I can see myself on YouTube though. Hopefully I can hear them. All right, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. And first and foremost, let's start with what is grief, right? And if you look up the definition of grief, I'm gonna do it again for you guys. You will get deep sorrow, especially that is caused by somebody's death, right? That's, I feel like, the most popular like thing that you will hear is that usually when someone passes, you kind of feel this overwhelming sadness and sorrow. And we call that grief. And I feel like it's tied to a loss of some sort. But a loss is not always just about the people that we lose. It's also about the reality of our life changing. So what I want you guys to try to do is extend that and then give yourself some grace, because we're not just grieving our loved ones that are passing. We're grieving life as we knew it. Our day-to-day has changed drastically, like really, really drastically. Your friendships have changed. You need to grieve that too. Some of you have switched jobs, myself included, right? Like I'm doing this full time now, and trying to build a platform and a business out of this. And this is not the route that I thought I was going to go. So I had to grieve that reality, and it was really hard. Um, what else can you grieve? You grieve sometimes the dreams that can't happen the way that you plan them to. Um, for instance, like, did I think I'd be living in Denver at this point in my life? Like, no, like, did I think that I would be in somebody's corporate office in a corner, being that boss woman? Yeah. And not that that still can't happen. It's just not going to happen in the way that I thought it would. And I'm actually more happy for it. But there's still a part of me that had to let that go. And I think that I found a different definition of grief that I feel like encompasses this a lot better. And that was, grief is the conflicting feelings caused by the end of or change in a familiar pattern of behavior, um, which pretty much covers everybody and everything, right? I think the hardest thing for us as human beings, which still doesn't make sense to me, is that we really don't like change. Like, our brains really enjoy consistency. We are hardwired for it and for stability, just to find out that the gag is the only thing that is consistent about life is change. Things change every single day, and we have to find a way to deal with that. And it is exhausting, and it can be painful, and it can be scary. And there's a lot of fear, like, wrapped up in that. And then there's also overwhelming sadness. And I want to kind of walk you through what I experienced, with a few examples, because I think sometimes we just talk about definitions and, oh, there's this and that. But I think it helps when somebody tells you, like, let's name the feelings. Let's talk about the ugly side of this, that people don't want to talk about, and even some of the positive sides of this. So, okay, here it goes. When we're talking about grief, and there's another quote that I kind of wanted to use for this, I want to talk about losing people in our life, because that's the one that's most prevalent to all of us. And there's a definition for that. So grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who's always been there, only to discover when you need them one more time, they're no longer there. And I had to fight back tears just even thinking about that. And I'm trying really hard because I didn't bring my tissues out here. And I know better than to not bring my tissues on a Monday, but it's really hard. It's really hard. And then sometimes we lose people that we never got to experience. Like, some of us have distant relatives, right, that we never got to meet, or for whatever reason. So we can even turn that around to, grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who has never been there for me, only to discover when I need them one more time, they still aren't there. And it's this, like, closing of the loop, that possibility is not there for you anymore, and you have to grieve that loss even though you never physically had it. And that's sometimes harder to explain to people. And then sometimes we can think about it in terms of divorce or lost friendships, or even just what we're experiencing right now. And it says, grief is the feeling of reaching out for someone who had been there for me at one time, only to discover that I can't go back to get help or comfort anymore. And I know that all of us who are living through this pandemic, that's globally, but then especially those of us that have been experiencing genocide and war over the last year, it has been so traumatizing and the grief has been overwhelming. It almost feels like we're in a suspended state because we're not really sure what we're grieving yet. In all of those scenarios, we're not sure. Are we grieving the loss of family members we haven't met? Probably. Are we grieving family that we haven't heard back from yet and we just have no idea? So we're waiting and we're watching and we're hoping and we're praying. Yeah, we're in like a very suspended state of grief, and it's so hard every day to pretend to be normal, to continue the fight and to walk forward. It's extremely exhausting and difficult, and I'm just like overwhelmed by it all on most days. And I think that a lot of you look at me and you're like, how does she manage it all? A lot of practices, a lot of practices, and I'll go over that more on week 3 this month. But I wanted to just talk about the first step, which is you have to face your grief and you have to acknowledge it and you have to deal with the emotion and the pain, because the longer you try to avoid it, like the harder it gets and the harder it becomes. And sometimes our brains don't want us to feel that much pain. And so what will happen is we create a narrative, a story that is a lot softer for us to deal with. There's days even now where I don't feel like my loved ones are gone. And I think sometimes like it tricks us because we don't physically see our loved ones every day, right? At least like the majority of us don't, if you're an immigrant. So there's a part of us that doesn't necessarily believe that the person is gone. And those days are actually the hardest because when you remember, it's like you remember losing them all over again. And you might try to call them or message them, or you're checking to be like, is this real? Is this real? And it feels like you don't know up from down, you know? And it's so hard and it's so hurtful. And I just wanted to talk about that part of it, the facing the feelings of it, because it is difficult. So I'm gonna talk about a couple people, and I just want to put out a general trigger warning for folks. Oh, the trash people are right back around. Hopefully it's not too loud. Oh, that sounded really loud. I want to talk about a couple people, and I'm going to start with my grandma. And I want to tie in our Hazen culture. If you're unfamiliar, it's just like if you're not East African or you're not Habesha or whatever, however you identify, we have a specific grieving process in our culture. We call it a Hazen. And it's pretty heavy. It's some pretty heavy stuff. Because our people suffer so much, they hold in so much, that I have this philosophy that when it comes to the Hazen, they finally let it all out. And it could be, oh, that truck is loud. It can be extremely traumatic for a lot of us. So what I wanted to share first about was losing my grandma, and facing that grief. And I want to talk to you guys about losing my cousin, if I can get through it. I'm already getting emotional. It's really hard for me to talk about her still, and it's been almost 2 years. And I want to talk to you guys about my aunt that passed in a similar way. So trigger warning, because those two passed because of domestic violence, and it was extremely difficult. It's still extremely difficult. And I want you guys to understand that grief is not a linear process. You don't from it one day and you're completely over it. You heal enough to the point where you learn to accept your new reality, and getting your brain to that is really hard. So firstly, what it felt like, ooh, there goes my voice already. Okay, what it felt like losing my grandma. So it's difficult, but my grandma was sick for a long time, for some years actually, and she had a stroke that had severely impaired her like standard of living. And I felt like, every other month there was something that was going on with her, and I knew she was just in pain all the time. And I remember I graduated college. Like I was working, and like I was like, "Mom, look, I got the bills. It's not that much. I can do it." Um, I had lived on my own through college anyways. And I was like, "Go be with her because I don't think she has that much time left." Oh my God. I haven't talked about this in a long time. So, um, in that process, like my mom got to go there. She was there for like a long time, actually, just finally being able to be the caregiver for her mom, because my mom is a caregiver and she takes care of everybody else's parents here. And so I know it was really hard for her um, to not be able to do that for her own mother. And so I was really like lucky and blessed to give her that gift. Um, and so she went to go care for her. And then she came back and I came, there's some stuff in between, but anyways, I think we'd only been home for like 2 days, and then we got a call back from Adi, from back home in Tigray, and they were like, something had happened to her jaw, like where she couldn't eat. And so everybody was like crying, and they're like, my mom was upset because she's like, I just saw her, she was just fine. And it was just so hard because we didn't know what to do. And so we literally just bought like emergency, like last minute flights. And it was me, my mom, and my aunt, and we ended up flying there. And when we got there, my grandma was in a lot of pain, and I can tell, but she was so sharp. Like, that woman is stubborn, okay? She is stubborn. She was like, she refused to wear, like, she was like, did not want to be a baby. She didn't want to be babied. She didn't want diapers, or she didn't want to be like, she just wanted to function, and I could tell. It was really hard, but also there's a lot of beauty in that, because like she was surrounded by all her kids and almost all of her grandkids, and her great grandson, she was able to see him and be with him too. And so at such a hard time, we were all surrounded by love. And the hardest thing about grief too is like this confusing and conflicting part of it, which that quote was sharing of, on one side of it, you're extremely sad because you're losing this person that you love so much, and your reality is going to change. You're not going to have access to them in the same way that you're used to. You can't just pick up the phone and call them. And so there's this overwhelming sadness for that person, but really and truly for ourselves. And I had levels of it because as a diaspora, or as an immigrant, I didn't get to spend that much time with her. And because of the language barrier, um, I didn't get to always communicate with her in the way that I wanted to. And so my grief was like compiling, and it was so much anger at the world, anger at the fact that like I didn't get to grow up in ID the way that I would have. Um, so I was grieving a lot of realities at once. And then the housing culture, back home, it is actually, can be beautiful, the meanings and the reasons why people do things, but it can also be very traumatic because people come in and because they don't normally cry or, the shock or whatever, um, they just go ham. Like, they are jumping up and down, they are, like, super emotional, and it's, like, such a wide range of expression. Um, they are, like, falling on the floor, people are carrying them, and, like, you can just tell they are releasing so much pain. And then you have the people that come in, like, really quietly and, like, don't say much, and they're coming kind of, like, out of respect and community. And it's, like, this weird jarring experience. Like, you'll be laughing 1 second and crying, and then someone else comes in and they're like going ham, and you're just like, what the hell's going on? And it's just so overwhelming, like, let alone trying to pay attention to your own feelings. And then I also just felt uncomfortable with a bunch of people staring at me like, oh, this poor family. And it's like, I know they're like, what else are you gonna look at, right? But it's just it's almost compiled because for me it's like I don't know you, and like I don't want to be in this state with you. um and when I kind of let go of that pride, I was just like, well, look at that, the beauty in the fact that these people don't know me and they're still wishing me well and trying to hold me up. So I think that there's still like some misunderstandings of like how we grieve as a people, but I also don't think we've ever had the luxury of, especially in this country, of doing the housing properly, because the part that was different there was the 40 days that you stay at home, or not even just at home, but like you're in grieving. It's like everyone knows, like when we wear the all black and you put your nitzala on, and everyone knows, like your job knows you're not expected to be there. And even if you are, because you're a laborer, like a day laborer, um there's a certain level of kindness and respect that people show you because they understand in the culture, like you can actually take a break there and your family does come around, and they have the capacity to show up. Like here, when we lost our cousin, it's similar, but it's different at the same time, because in this loss she was taken from us. So trigger warning again, talking about domestic violence. She was taken from us, by her boyfriend that we didn't know about. So imagine our shock, and to get a knock on the door from the police. I don't wish that on anyone. Was very confused and in shock, and it took a few days for the grief to set in because I was just in like action mode. But I was in this instance, it was anger that showed up first for me, not sadness. It was anger. It was shock and anger, and it was so difficult. Because with my grandma's case, even though I was overwhelmingly sad, and yes, I did have some anger, I think I had more time to prepare for it. Like I knew it was coming, and my wind chimes. And in this instance, I felt relief for my grandma because she was in so much pain that I wanted her to let go, because I knew she was going to a better place and that she didn't deserve to continue to live in pain just for the sake of us like having her, you know? And so I could find a way to like get through it because I had that sense of comfort even though it was really hard. Um but with Lydia and with my aunt Sega, um separate issues. With Sega, her boyfriend also took her from us. Um and even though he was arrested and in jail and all of that stuff, you would think that makes you feel better. And maybe for some people it does. So I'm not going to take that away from any of you. But what the grief felt like for me was really just an overwhelming sorrow, because her life felt cut short. Like I felt like she never got to live her potential. And the same with Lydia. Her boyfriend escaped jail and he ran away, um, back to Adi, back to Ethiopia. And you know what they all do? They run and they hide, because when you live in a corrupt ass country, who's gonna catch you? Um, Still sickening. But it was just an overwhelming anger for a long time. And I think it was because there was an overwhelming sadness that I had that I didn't want to acknowledge, because it was like, how did I miss this? Like, I just saw her. I just talked to her. There wasn't like, yeah, she was living her best life, but I didn't think it would be this. I didn't even know she had a boyfriend, so that threw me off. And I was just angry at myself and at the world for a very long time. Um, and then I felt really guilty because I kept thinking, was there something that I could have done? And those thoughts running around your brain over and over and over and over again really make the grief very difficult to deal with. And so, in facing that and facing it over the last 2 years for her, but you know, go 4 and 6 and 7, you know, for all the others that I've lost, it was really accepting that I was still here and that I was still moving and that my life continues and theirs doesn't. It's a hard statement to swallow. And I think that's what most of us struggle with, is that our life continues and theirs doesn't. And they're not there with us to experience all of the things. Like when you're happy and you want to call this person, you can't. At your biggest celebrations, they're not there, at least physically, right? And so I think the part for me has always been like, how do I still honor them and feel connected to them and remember them? And that comes kind of in a later stage, but all of that is to say that your reality, at least what you thought it was going to be, and probably how you've been visualizing it, or how your parents have set it up for you, like our parents love to set up our lives for us, it makes it so much more difficult because you can't see that picture the same anymore. And it's so hard to grasp that and to deal with it. And so I wanted us to talk about this, and I wanted to share this with you because, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sniffling through this whole thing, guys. It it eats at you, and I want you to know that this is normal for you to feel these things. It doesn't mean you're going crazy. Um, at times it feels overwhelming, But as someone who has been in perpetual grief for years, some days are easier than others. And the thing to like remember is that they're still with you in a different way. Like, they're not physically there, but I try to think of like, what would they tell me now? If they were here, can I still imagine what their reactions might be? Or I try to like create a scenario for what their lives could possibly be. Or I just want to share with them. So I'll share with them through prayer. Um, or just talk to them in general, like out loud. And I know it sounds crazy, but grief is only as hard as let it be. So if you can start to face some of it, if you can start talking about it out loud, it makes it a lot easier. And I will say the other thing that makes it hard is that it feels like you want the world to stop. And I have felt this over and over and over again in my life, that why is the world still spinning? Because my world has stopped spinning. And you learn the hard way that the world does not stop for us. We are small parts of it. And instead of feeling sad and pitiful in that, I have switched perspectives to remind myself and humble myself that I am only a small part of this world. And my only responsibility here is to experience it to its fullest. And for those who don't get to, for whatever reason, they don't get to make it to these different milestones in life and get to experience the different feelings about it, I got to do it bigger for them. Because when I get to my end date and I meet my maker, I want to have met them knowing that I tried every day to experience life and to be a better human and to show up in love. And that's how I choose to honor them. And that's how I face my grief every day, is to let it be my fuel for my purpose. But when I tried to avoid it, it didn't work. It just made me angrier, because I would look at people and I was like, why are they so happy? And why is, they just feel like life is rainbows and butterflies, and it's not. And the more that I talk to people, I realize they carry grief too. We can't always assume, I know there's times people will probably look at me and they're like, she's so happy and she's so strong, and look at her dealing with this all, and she has a smile on her face. And it's like, yeah, sure, maybe, but it's not there all day long. I still have to wake up and grapple with the fact that life as I know it is not the same. And to feel gaslit by people all the time, it's so painful and difficult. And I don't even know yet who I have to grieve, because we don't all know. So what I do is try not to run from it, face it every day, try to honor the loved ones that I remember in the moments that I remember them. When the moments of sadness come, I let myself cry. If I'm angry, I don't try to push past it. And all of that work has to happen daily, because if it doesn't, moving on and going another day becomes harder and harder. And that's when you find yourself in depression long term. That's when you find yourself in those situations where you feel like you can't move forward. And so when I tell you to face your grief every day, I'm not saying it's going to be easy. And I promise, I really promise you that it won't be. But I can say with certainty that you will get stronger every day. You just have to find the rituals, and you got to find a way to honor them and to live as they would have wanted you to. And I think the biggest trick is putting yourself in their shoes if they were the ones that were still here having to honor you, what would you want for them to do? So I want to end there, and I want to manifest some strength for everybody. Not the strength to avoid and just overcome and all that. No, I want to give you the strength on this healing journey. I want to manifest for you that you get the support and love that you need, that you get the mental relief, that you get the physical space to feel safe, that the right friends and family come into your life to hold you up on the days that are extra hard, that you can find purpose in your passions and your work to find a way to honor these people that you've lost, but also the strength to face a new reality, to accept a new reality, and to thrive in that. And that's what I want to manifest for everyone. And in order for us to all do that, we got to face our pain and not let it take over. So that is going to be the end of this episode. Thank you all for watching. Appreciate it. And y'all already know this is Manifest Mondays. I will be back on Wednesday for Black Women Wednesday. And I hope you guys all enjoyed that. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this channel so we can help build this platform out and continue to have a space that is for us. So I love you all, everybody. Happy Manifest Monday.